Hi there, and welcome to the Dentro Talent Podcast. I'm lucky enough to have Jen Beveridge with me today. Jen, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Rick. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. It's nice and sunny in Birmingham for a bit of a change. So I'm obviously nice to be locked in an office.
Also sunny just outside of Manchester. So yeah, lovely day today.
Excellent. So look, we're going to be having a chat today about career growth, the challenges that come with that, and specifically in that kind of change and transformation setting and world. Um, so I think it's probably relevant and right for you just to give us a bit of a taste of your career, the career trajectory, and what you've been up to.
Yeah, so I mean, starting from the outset, I actually started in retail. And that was really, as a Saturday girl in a supermarket. But with regards to career progression, retail was really the first place where I started to think about that. So, started as a checkout girl, as many would.
Yeah.
But then, through the retail sector, progressing through various different roles and ultimately coming out as a customer service manager in quite a large, well-established supermarket.
Okay.
So that was the early part of my career. Around age 22, I applied for an administration role in a mortgage outsourcing organisation. So very new, something a little bit different. And again, because of the organisation that I was currently in and their drive to develop people, had a number of years with that current organisation and varied different roles. Again, starting out as an administration assistant, but actually leaving the organisation approximately 8 years later as a learning and development lead trainer. So,
Okay.
through various different guises, I worked in the L&D realm, and then particularly in training, and very much supporting project change initiatives across the organisation, because ultimately the training of
Yeah.
whatever is coming on board needs to be rolled out. So I had a real keen interest and a lot of exposure to kind of change and transition, but in an L&D and training role.
Yeah.
I actually left that organisation. I took voluntary redundancy due to personal circumstances, and had about 12 months off. I did have a little career as a process manager for a telecommunications company.
Okay.
But although the people were fantastic, it wasn't really for me. And I was lucky enough to be invited back to the previous organisation as a trainer for a specific need. So, being the organisation I grew up with and knew very well, I jumped at the opportunity. I went back. And I think at that point, that's where I started to think about my career and what it needed to map out as. So I was
Yeah.
around 32, I would say.
Yeah.
And at that point, I thought, okay, where do I want to be in 10 years? What do I want to be doing? What kind of salary do I want to be looking at? I think money is always the option. And then from there, started to look at roles within change and transformation. Started off as a business analyst, really
Yeah.
enjoying that role, predominantly in business change rather than technical change. I did that for about 18 months. And I think what I found there was, although again, I really enjoyed the role, that the data side of things and the Excel side of things just wasn't my bag.
Yeah.
Still isn't my bag. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people could probably vouch for that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's a lot of people who are where it's a big boat, put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So from there, and I think from having experience working with a number of really good project managers, program managers, and some maybe not so great project managers and
Yeah.
program, made the decision that that's really what I wanted to do. I was lucky enough to be in an organisation the same organisation who really value colleagues and invest in their career development. So I was offered a developing project manager role with a development plan that came with that, some real key core objectives that I need to demonstrate. And within 6 months, had that signed off, moved into project management, which again was great, loved that. But at about age 42, I think I sat down, looked at my career development plan, looked where I got to, what I've achieved, and thought, okay, we need a bit of a reset. And at that point, I took the leap. I moved into a completely different organisation, software, still in the financial services, retail banking kind of area, but all new people, all new processes. I'd spent 15 plus years in the same organisation, so it really was a big challenge for me. And I did it. And I spent 2.5 years at my previous organisation. And again, within that organisation, progressed from senior project manager when I joined into programme manager for a period of 12 months. And unfortunately, just been made redundant. So again, bit of a stop checkpoint in the life, work, career plan and what that needs to look like. So just having a bit of time out, doing some resetting, and thinking kind of what's next.
Yeah, and I think the point that you made there about being in one organisation for 15 years, learning, and clearly they invested in you as an individual, and gave you the opportunity to upskill as a BA and then into that project management role. But quite often certainly talking to people in change and transformation day in, day out, quite often you have to make that move and that jump to really accelerate your career. And that, both from a financial standpoint, but also just from a responsibility standpoint. And it's important to realize when that time comes and when that point is, when you're at that junction. Was there anything that kind of really made you think, okay, right, now is the time, now I have to do that? Or was it just a real calculated, okay, I've sat down, this is where I'm at, this is where I want to be, these are the changes I've got to make?
Well, I think you touched on it then, really, Rick. So I got to a point where I'd progressed to a point financially within that organisation where, that there wasn't much scope to financially gain anything more, but just because of the organisation. And I think, moving internally through organisations, that you inherit that, and I think everybody appreciates that. I think for me, it was actually challenging myself because I'd been in the organisation for so long, and I had a really great network. Everybody, the ins and outs of doing things. Mm-hmm. I wanted to try and do the role that I was doing, but in an organisation where I didn't have that comfort blanket, and you can't get things through the back door, as they say. And, is it just that people, I suppose, like me, want to work with me, that we get the things done, and I'm really good at doing what I'm doing. So I want to go and try that with people I've never met before, and really challenge myself in that area and see if the skills that I believe I've got in this organisation are fully transferable and I can do them somewhere new. So that was the kind of checkpoint for me. Confidence. Am I good at what I do, or is it just because I've been here a long time?
And you can, I speak to people who have that comfort blanket firmly, tucked up, and they're pretty set where they are. And it's tough. It can be a tough decision to make. So there's something else that you mentioned in there that I want to pick up on as well. You mentioned you learned from some great project managers, but also some bad ones. And I think this is a really important part of growth, learning, and development. I won't ask whether you learned more from the good or the bad, because if you become a good project and program manager, then you obviously learnt more from the good. But were there times where you kind of reflected or took stock of the bad, let's say, but bad processes and project managers that perhaps you'd worked with, and thought, I don't want to be like that, or or was it more of a, okay, I aspire to be that good project manager that I've worked with, or a bit of both?
Um, I probably in the early stages, if I'm honest, it was probably more around where I perhaps saw the project managers not doing what I thought would be the right way to do
Yeah,
things. So it was more of a, I think I'd have done that differently, or that didn't quite feel right to me as part of that team, and as a leader, a manager of a
mm,
project team, perhaps we would have done that a little bit differently. So I think in the early stages, that was certainly my trigger.
yeah,
But from a career development, as you say, you need to be focusing on the people that are great, good, that you aspire to be like. And I was very lucky to have a number of, very good individuals who I'm still friends with today, who helped me through that journey. Not just project managers, but program managers, but really good mentors and coaches as well.
yeah, perfect.
And I think within the organisation that I was working with, that was absolutely encouraged. And those are the people, that you can look at in the organisation and think they've got something that I want to be like. And using those people as well as part of your development journey, and, just as you say, reflecting, getting some coaching on how you would perhaps do things differently, and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I
Yeah,
think in the early stages, probably more on the I wouldn't have done it like that. This is why I would do it differently, which is why I wanted to become a PM ultimately.
yeah,
But then later, as your career moves on, and as you want to progress, I would really encourage people to be looking at the good and the great. And again, like I say, I've been really lucky to have a lot of individuals on my journey.
yeah.
So build your network. Yeah.
Yeah, and most people who I talk to who have, reached a kind of a senior level, whether it's in change, transformation, or tech, always point back to mentors, guides, and people who, whether it was in an official capacity or whether it was just more of an informal, you know, maybe go for a coffee or go for a drink with somebody and sit and talk about things. At what point in your journey did that happen?
Um, I would probably say once, I'd set my career path, and that became something that, from a work, but also from a personal perspective, really opened your eyes to that kind of things. And by using, resources, every time you look at things, it encourages you to do these things. It encourages you to set a development plan and things like that. So by researching, it's mentioned to you. So I think, that was probably when I recognised that I need it more, but also recognised that the 10 years previously, I'd had that, but not recognised it in that kind of certain
Yeah,
capacity.
yeah,
And I think that just comes with a little bit of maturity as well. I was new to all this. I was just willing to learn anything and do what anything
yeah,
needed
yeah. That's it.
anybody needed me to do. So,
Yeah. So you just mentioned kind of moving into a new position, or being new to stuff. Um, what do you think the biggest challenges you faced were as you went through your career, as you go through your career still? What are the challenges that you face when you take on more responsibility, whether that is people leadership, whether it's budgetary responsibility? What are the big ones that you can think, yeah, that was tough moving into that role or moving into that capacity? That was tough.
I think one of particularly progressing through internally in an organisation for quite a long time. I think being clear on what your responsibilities are, and also helping people understand what your responsibilities are now. You have perhaps changed position. So you yourself can find yourself getting sucked into doing something, rolling your sleeves up and perhaps picking up something that's not necessarily your responsibility, but you've got the skills and experience to do it. So it happens naturally. And I think also when you work with people for such a long time, although they know about your possible promotion or your new role type, they've known you in your capacity for so many years that, again, it's very difficult for them to, I want to say draw the line, but, that's perhaps a little bit too harsh. But
Yeah.
being clear yourself and making sure that other people are clear on what your responsibilities are, what your role is now. And I think really one of the terms I use quite a lot is protect your scope. So, with your change and transformation hat on, that is it. I'm here to do this role, and I need everybody to know what role I'm here to play, because ultimately, if we've got a gap, we need to be talking about that. If my stakeholders are expecting something different from me that's not wrote down on this piece of paper, we need to talk that through. So that's I think one of the key ones for me from an internal perspective. I've had a lot of experience of that, and being quite young as well, and in quite senior roles is also a bit of a challenge. So that was probably one of the big ones for me.
And I think to touch on the first point you made, I think it works from both sides, doesn't it? Both from the expectations of leadership in the organisation. So, are you still viewed as somebody who does the role that you did before, because that's how you've grown up in that company, like you said. So, are you always viewed with those kind of tinted spectacles on of, okay, but Jen used to do that role, so can we not ask her to just plug that gap or fill in? And you do have to be really strong to kind of say, that's not my responsibility anymore. I'm doing all of this great stuff that you've asked me to do. So there's a little piece of the leadership team letting go, but I also think there's a big piece of the individual letting go, and letting go of the tasks that maybe you previously did as part of your day to day, and stepping away from that and handing it over to somebody, potentially to somebody who isn't as good as it at it as you are. Did you find that kind of letting go piece difficult, or were you able to set those boundaries and that, like you said, kind of scope?
I find it very difficult, if I'm honest, and still to this day I receive feedback about time management, willingness to say yes to everything. But I think that is one of the key learnings that I've taken away from my last role, and the feedback I've received from individuals, that I tend to still do that. And I think because my head is very much delivery focused, we have to get things done. I believed my role was to be there to get everything done regardless. And the key learning for me this time will be, be clear again on your roles and responsibilities. And if there are opportunities that come up, that perhaps are outside your scope, roles and responsibilities, if those are responsibilities or opportunities for you to grow, then great. Let's have a conversation about that, and how do I do that going forward? If it's perhaps something that I could do for a bit of a stopgap, but not necessarily part of my scope role moving forward, then I think I would absolutely raise that more going forward. So
and I think it's so prevalent in almost every sector and almost every industry. If you're a technical person and you're moving through a career, you always get pulled into that technical detail. If you're in a program or project delivery function, you can easily get pulled down into the weeds, where actually that's not your role anymore. Okay, and again, as you've gone through your career, as you've taken on more responsibility, has the dreaded kind of imposter syndrome ever struck for you? Have you ever kind of thought, "Oh, what am I doing here?"
Um, I suppose kind of yes and no. I think the confidence side of things got me a little bit in my last organisation because I had only been there for a short time. Unfortunately, not due
Yeah,
to performance, I was made redundant. So that did give me a little bit of a wobble. I think one of the things that I do and I encourage people to do all the time is be really clear about what you are there to achieve and what your goal is. And what your objectives are. Working in learning and development on the people side of things, objectives, having goals, having career paths, all those kind of good things are really kind of true to heart to me. And I think once you've got that and you're clear and you're talking to your coaches, your mentors, your line managers, whoever it is that you're reporting into about what you want to do, that really helps you along your journey. And being open and honest. And like I say, having mentors, coaches, not being afraid to say, I don't understand that. I'm not sure how to do that. I've done that in the past, but I've not done too much of that. And just
yeah,
being open and honest. I think that for me is how I get over that.
yeah,
Um, and I think that the confidence thing for me was just a little bit, about the redundancy, but take it as an opportunity, I think, as well. So, take time to
yeah,
reset, think about your work-life balance, get involved with great things like this. Because
yeah, yeah.
you've got time to
Great
do
things
them.
like this.
Great
Yeah,
things.
yeah, and I think we talked about it earlier about leaving an organisation is a reset. It is an opportunity, and redundancy can have this kind of black cloud over it where and it's difficult. It's a very 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 difficult situation to be put in, and your confidence absolutely can take a knock from it. But I think over time, as you kind of hopefully rationalize the thinking behind it and set what you are now looking for out, it can give you more confidence moving forward of, okay, I've survived that. And resilience is one of the biggest traits in your career and your working life, isn't it? And you build that resilience pot up through some of those what can be perceived as kind of negative experiences.
Yeah. I think,
um
and resilience is a great one. And I'm smiling to myself because the last organisation I was in, when we first joined, we had a kind of a quarterly meeting with the function, and we were asked, if you were a kitchen utensil, what would you be?
mm,
And after a little bit of thought, it's not really a utensil, but it certainly lives in a kitchen. I said that I would be kind of Teflon or a non-stick baking sheet or something
yeah,
like that, because resilience is key to part of the role. And, I think if something does go wrong, you need to take notice of where you've got development, deal with something if it has gone wrong, but don't take it too personally, and
yeah,
just kind of let it slip off a little bit,
yeah, yeah,
and just think
yeah,
about how you do it differently. And I think encouraging yourself to sit down and take time out on a weekly, maybe monthly basis to reflect back to what you've done and achieved that month as well. That's really key to going, wow, look what I did achieve this month, or actually
yeah,
I could have done that a little bit better. So I'll
yeah.
take it forward for next month.
And did you use that kind of reflection and goal setting, if you like, when you moved up through into a more senior role, or perhaps took a promotion? And are there any other things that you processes you went through to equip yourself for that more senior position or more responsibility?
Um, just again, using the resources that you've got available, use your network. Absolutely. There's so much, even just for information gathering, and you tend to doing a role for so long, you tend to get a bit lax on your language, your terminology, that kind of thing. So just refreshing yourself with resources, seeking feedback, I think is one of the key things for me. I'm really asking for open and honest feedback, that's focusing on the development areas, maybe not just the great ones.
Yeah.
And yeah, so just equip yourself with things like that and be confident in what you are applying for. And like I said, there's so many online resources out there that I was never really made aware of, never had time to invest in things like that. But the redundancy has kind of opened my eyes up to that and what resources there are out there as well. So,
Yeah.
do your research, use your network, gather feedback, I think for me. Especially in the kind of roles leadership roles that you go in for,
Yeah.
it is all around how people perceive you and, getting the job done. So it's
Yeah.
good to listen to people.
Perfect. I'm going to ask you one more question. If you could have 5 minutes with the checkout girl a few years back, what would be your one piece of advice that you would give to her?
I think for me, well, I'd have to put two. I can never do one thing.
Okay,
So
fine.
yeah, okay. Be clear on what it is that you want to achieve. Yeah. Review it regularly because it can and will change. Your work-life balance plays a big part in what you do and how you progress. And be confident in that and have a great mentor. Have somebody who you really trust, admire, aspire. Doesn't have to be one. And like you say, even just on a non-professional level, if there's somebody out there that you can have a coffee with, just a chat, and use the network. So that was probably about 4 things, Rick. Sorry.
I definitely counted at
It was
least
in
3.
one
I'll take
sentence
that.
with a
I'll
few
take that. Jen, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks a lot for taking some time out.
No, thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.